My parents gave my sister $10 million. They gave me a bus pass and a warning not to come back. The snow hadn't started yet that morning, but the wind already carried the bite of something coming. I remember standing by the kitchen island, my hands wrapped around the frayed strap of my old gym bag, and asking Mom, quietly, carefully, if I could get new shoes. Mine had holes in both soles, and with PE in the snow-damp gym, every step squished. She didn't even look up from the coupon she was cutting. Money doesn't grow on trees, Grace, she sighed, sliding open her wallet with the reluctance of a woman being robbed. Here's 20. Make it work. Later that day, Camilla came home, singing about cinnamon rolls and how much she loved the peppermint hot chocolate from that cute cafe in the plaza. She had 3 bags dangling from each arm, 2 sweaters, a faux fur vest, and a pair of boots that practically winked when she walked. Her tablet, her third in 2 years, was charging on the kitchen counter with a new stylus clipped neatly to the side. The unfairness was so baked into our daily life that even my anger felt worn out. But something shifted that evening while I walked past Ridge Rose Cafe on my way home from school. Through the foggy window, I spotted the owners, Maya and Derek, rushing behind the counter looking short-staffed. A small paper sign taped to the glass said, "Help wanted, weekends plus evenings." I didn't think. I just opened the door. Maya looked up, surprised but not unkind. "Can I help you?" "I saw the sign," I said. "I can work." The words surprised me more than they surprised her. Something about the warmth of the cafe, the hiss of the espresso machine, the hum of jazz on vinyl, the quiet clinking of ceramic made the moment feel right. She blinked. "You're in school?" 16. I can work evenings and weekends." A pause, then a smile. "We'll give you a trial." That Saturday, I was behind the counter in a borrowed apron, learning how to steam milk and stack scones. Derek showed me how to keep the tip jar facing the register. "People tip better if they see someone else's dollar already there," he said, slipping a 5 in himself. "Start the kindness chain." I didn't tell my parents. I knew what would happen if I did. They'd find a way to claim it, make it theirs, frame it as a household contribution. So I told them I was helping Maya with homework. They never asked what subject. Every week I worked 2 evening shifts and both weekend mornings. I got paid in cash and tips and tucked half of it under a loose floorboard in my closet. With my first month's pay, I bought a second-hand pair of boots, a black coat missing one button, and a set of pens I didn't strictly need. It felt like power. One evening, near closing time, Mr. Rayford shuffled in. He was a regular, the kind of man who read physical newspapers and tipped $2 on every coffee. "You knew?" he asked, settling into his usual booth. I nodded. "First week." He looked me over, kindly, not judging, and said, "You've got your head on straight. Reminds me of someone I used to know." Then he pushed a 5 toward the tip jar and added, "Keep going." By the 3rd week, I had memorized the register buttons, learned which customers liked their biscotti warm, and figured out how to make Maya laugh when she was tired. I even started staying after close to wipe down the counters without being asked. It felt like a life I was borrowing, but it was mine for those hours. Then came the moment I feared. It was Saturday afternoon. The first weekend, Camilla didn't have ballet practice, and my parents decided to visit the plaza. I was steaming milk when I saw them through the front window, Judith's hand on Camilla's shoulder, Nathan looking for parking. I froze, latte pitcher in hand. They walked in. Judith spotted me first. Her eyes widened. "Grace?" she said, loud enough to startle Maya. "I work here," I said simply, not stopping the milk. "You've been working here?" Nathan echoed behind her. "For a couple of months." Neither of them ordered anything. Judith looked around like she'd stepped into the wrong restaurant, then took Camilla by the hand and walked out. I knew dinner would be interesting. That night, the kitchen felt colder than usual. They were already seated when I got home, plates out, no seat for me. I stood until Nathan gestured to the chair across from him. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. "I didn't think you'd care. Of course we care," Judith said, but her voice lacked conviction. "How much are they paying you?" Nathan asked next. I gave them the number, roughly $400 a month, give or take tips. Something changed in their faces, not pride, not concern. Calculation. Nathan cleared his throat. Since you're living under our roof, eating our food, using our electricity, I think it's only fair that you contribute. Most people thought Grandpa Walter was just an old man who fed squirrels and argued with his tomatoes. I knew better. The first time I really noticed how much Walter saw, without saying much, was a week after that night at the dinner table. I hadn't said yes to giving up half my paycheck, but I also hadn't said no out loud. I just kept going to work and kept hiding my cash under that loose floorboard. The silence at home had grown thicker, colder. Walter lived across the street, a little down the block, in a cottage with blue shutters and wind chimes that jingled even when there was no wind. Every afternoon, he'd sit on his porch swing in his gray cardigan, the same one every day, sipping tea from a chipped mug with faded roses on it. He looked like he belonged to a different time. I started walking slower when I passed his place after school. Eventually, he waved. Then one day, he called out, "Something wrong with your shoes?" I looked down. My laces were uneven, soles worn thin, toes fraying at the edges. "They're fine," I lied. "You're limping," he said. I shrugged. "Long day." He nodded like he believed me. Then he reached down beside his chair and pulled out a small square tin. "Your grandmother used to keep lemon drops in here. I still do." He offered it. I hesitated, then took one. That's how it started. I began stopping by after school. Sometimes I sat on the porch swing with him. Sometimes I just stood at the railing and listened while he talked about his garden or what the squirrels were up to. He never asked about my parents, never pried, but he noticed things. "You look tired," he said one Thursday. "I work weekends." "At that cafe?" I nodded. "Ridge Roast." He nodded back. "Good people there." It was the gentlest approval I'd ever received. In early March, my essay won first place in the statewide high school writing contest. When I told my parents, they nodded, barely. They didn't come to the awards ceremony. They said Camilla had a choir recital the same night. Walter showed up instead. He wore a coat with the tag still dangling inside. He brought a bouquet of yellow chrysanthemums and clapped louder than anyone when my name was called. Afterward, we sat in his car while he sipped black coffee from a thermos, and I held the certificate in my lap. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the best kind of acknowledgement. One rainy Saturday, I knocked on his door after a long shift. My feet were soaked. He didn't ask why I wasn't home. He just handed me a towel and made tea. We sat in his kitchen while a clock ticked louder than the rain. "That coat's too thin," he said finally. "Come with me." He led me to the hall closet, opened it, and pulled out a navy pea coat. "Was your father's. From when he was your age." "I can't take that." "You're not taking it. I'm giving it." I held it up. It still smelled like cedar and old memories. It fit better than anything I owned. Mr. Rayford stopped by that evening while I was still there. He dropped off a newspaper and a plastic bag of apples. He looked at me, then at Walter. "She's turning out better than most." "She's not done turning," Walter replied. They chuckled like old men do, quietly, without words. The next week was my birthday. I didn't expect much. My parents forgot until the day of, when Camilla sang me a half-hearted version of Happy Birthday in her pajamas. No cake, no card. When I got home from school, Walter wasn't on his porch swing, but on my front step there was a small package. Inside was a birthday card in his blocky handwriting, just my name on the envelope, and inside a single $100 bill folded in half with a note written in black pen. "For shoes that fit you." I stood there for a long time, staring at the bill, the envelope, and the steady glow of his porch light across the street. She looks across the street at his porch light and thinks, maybe I'm not alone after all. The day I got my college acceptance, my parents told me they had other priorities. They meant Camilla. The envelope was thick and cream-colored, with gold lettering that said, "Congratulations." I opened it alone in my room, sitting cross-legged on my bed, the old patchwork quilt Walter's wife had made years ago tucked under my legs. My heart pounded with every word. Full scholarship, housing included, meal plan covered, welcome to State University. I cried. Not from surprise. I'd worked hard. I'd applied early. I'd written an essay about resilience that even Ms. Weaver said gave her chills. I cried because for the first time I saw a real door open in front of me, a door I'd carved myself. I waited until dinner to tell them. I didn't expect a cake or a cheer, but maybe a nod, something. We can't afford to send you to college, Nathan said, without looking up from his plate. Not with Camilla's private school tuition. I blinked. It's covered. I got a full ride. Judith reached for the salt. Well, that's nice. Then she turned to Camilla. Tell Grace about your project, honey. She's doing a business proposal for her entrepreneurship class. In 6th grade. Camilla lit up. It's about a line of pet accessories that double as tracking devices. That's good, I said, but I don't think anyone heard me. That night, Walter invited me over. He had meatloaf warming in the oven and 2 glasses of sweet tea already poured. I'm moving in August, I told him, the words soft but certain. Good, he said. You were born to go. I don't think they'll even notice I'm gone. He set down his fork. You'd be surprised what people miss after they've lost it. We sat in silence a long time after that. The summer passed in a blur of packing boxes, work shifts, and paperwork. My parents didn't ask where I was going to live. They didn't offer a ride. Camilla was gearing up for a leadership camp out of state. They were too busy. Walter cleared out the guest room for me. It still smelled faintly of lavender and books. He gave me an extra drawer, helped me carry boxes, and showed me how to use the washer that always rattled like it might explode. The night before I left, he gave me a heavy package wrapped in newspaper. I opened it to find a vintage typewriter, charcoal gray, with silver keys and a ribbon that still worked. It was your grandmother's, he said. She wrote letters on it, grocery lists, once a poem that made the church newsletter. I ran my fingers over the keys. It's beautiful. You'll write things worth keeping, he said. On move-in day, Ms. Weaver sent me a message wishing me luck. Maya from the cafe handed me a card with $20 and a coffee gift card. My parents didn't call. Walter drove me to campus in his rusted Chevy. He waited until I had my room key before he left. I'll call you Sunday, he said, smiling. Don't forget to eat something green. That night, I sat on the narrow bed in my new dorm room and looked around. The ceiling was high, the walls bare. My roommate hadn't arrived yet. I unpacked my bag slowly, books, notebooks, the typewriter. I set it on the desk. Nathan informed me dryly, We're investing everything in Camilla's future. You'll figure it out. You always do. They never asked how my classes were going, but they always remembered to ask if I'd sent the money. The first time they asked, it was barely 2 weeks into my sophomore year. I had just started a job at the university library. Quiet work, mostly reshelving books and tutoring the occasional freshman in English comp. My schedule was packed, but the hours were decent and the pay was steady. I was proud of how far I'd come, until the phone rang. Grace, sweetie, Judith said, her voice coated in artificial concern. We're a little behind on the gas bill. Camilla's laptop just broke and we really could use some help. I said yes. I wish I could say it was out of obligation or guilt or even hope for approval, but truthfully, I said yes because of Walter, because he'd once told me, don't let bitterness change who you are. You're already the good part. So I started sending them $1,000 a month. At first, it felt like a small sacrifice. I packed lunches, skipped weekend outings, bought textbooks secondhand. But over time, the asks got bigger. The car needs tires, Nathan said in November. Camilla needs help with spring break housing, Judith said in March. By summer, they'd stopped pretending it was about need. It was about convenience, about habit. And I kept giving. Camilla's Instagram told a different story. Designer sneakers, resort brunches in Sedona, a spa trip to unwind from finals. I watched the stories disappear after 24 hours like nothing ever happened, but they stuck with me. Walter didn't ask questions, but one evening while we were shelling peas on his back porch, he said, just make sure you know why you're doing it. I'm not sure anymore, I replied. He nodded. Then that's your answer. That fall, a letter arrived from Mr. Rayford. He'd moved to Arizona to be closer to his sister, but before he left, he'd promised to send me something. The envelope was thick, the paper yellowed. It was a letter from his son, written years ago but never sent. "Dad," it began, "I wish I'd stood up sooner. You were right about Mom, about what she made me feel like. I just didn't want to believe it. I thought being loyal meant being silent. It didn't. It just made me complicit." I read the letter twice, then a third time. I didn't tell Walter, but I think he knew something had shifted. Thanksgiving came. I stayed on campus, saying I had too much work to travel. The truth was simpler. I couldn't stand the thought of sitting across the table from them, carving turkey while they smiled and asked for more. Instead, I ate microwave lasagna and called Walter. He described his day. He'd burned the sweet potatoes, but the green beans turned out fine. His friend Elaine had brought a pecan pie and beat him at Scrabble. He didn't mention my parents, neither did I. In December, they called again. "Hey, kiddo," Nathan said. "Far too casual. We've been thinking. With Camilla graduating soon and the economy being what it is, it might be time to increase the monthly amount. Say, $1,500? I choked on my tea. "Don't worry," Judith added quickly. "Just until we get back on our feet." When I hesitated, Camilla took the phone. "Don't be so selfish, Grace. It's not like you need all that money for yourself." Grandpa Walter's 80th birthday was supposed to be a celebration. It ended with a legacy shattered and rewritten. It started sweet enough. Elaine, Walter's oldest friend and his lawyer, had helped decorate the backyard with string lights and folding chairs. The neighbors brought covered dishes, green bean casserole, deviled eggs, cornbread stuffing. Someone even dusted off an old stereo to play swing music under the bare December trees. A few distant cousins I barely remembered showed up with cheap wine and wide smiles. Camilla arrived late, of course. She was wearing a camel-colored coat that probably cost more than a semester's rent. Her nails were done in a glossy mauve, and a tiny designer clutch dangled from her wrist like an afterthought. Nathan and Judith followed close behind, chatting like old friends, reuniting with a long-lost relative instead of the daughter they hadn't seen in nearly a year. Walter stood near the fire pit in a dark wool suit, wearing a tie I'd given him 3 birthdays ago, the one with little saxophones printed on it. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "There's my girl," he said, pulling me in for a hug. Dinner was served buffet style. I helped pass out plates and poured coffee for the older guests who didn't trust their balance on the deck stairs. Camilla took selfies with the cranberry sauce. Judith fawned over Walter's friends. Nathan hovered by the grill, telling anyone who would listen that he once considered opening a steakhouse. And then came the toasts. One by one, people stood. Elaine spoke fondly about Walter's crossword addiction. Mr. Kravitz from down the street told a story about Walter fixing a neighbor's mailbox during a snowstorm. Even shy little Hannah from the post office got up to thank him for always waving at her dad's truck. Then Judith clinked her glass. "To my wonderful mother-in-law," she began, beaming, "who's always been the backbone of this family." I stiffened. "And," she continued, "while I have everyone's attention, I just want to share something." Walter's brow furrowed. "My daughter Grace, though she's become quite successful, has recently decided that family isn't important to her. She's refused to support her sister. Even a simple graduation gift was too much for her." The words hit like sleet. I felt the air shift, guests freezing mid-bite, utensils clinking softly as hands trembled. I stood slowly. "Since we're airing things out," I said, "let's be clear." All eyes turned to me. "For the last 3 years, I've been sending you money. $1,000 a month, sometimes more." Elaine glanced up, suddenly alert. Nathan's face tightened. Judith looked pale. I continued, voice steady. "You said Camilla needed help with tuition, housing, a broken laptop, emergency expenses, and I believed you." "That's enough, Grace," Judith hissed. "No," I said. "It isn't." Elaine set down her glass. "Excuse me," she said. "That doesn't sound right." Everyone turned. "As Walter's estate lawyer," she went on, "I can confirm that Camilla received a full ride through the Whitmore Legacy Grant. Tuition, housing, meal plan, everything." There was a long, stunned silence. I connect the dots. The money wasn't needed. It was exploited. The envelope was thick. Inside, one letter, one document, and a quiet kind of justice. It arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under my door like a quiet guest with heavy footsteps. I found it lying between the morning paper and a grocery store flyer. My name was written in neat block letters, no return address. I stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. Even unopened, I knew who it was from. Walter always did prefer the silent delivery over grand gestures. Instead of tearing it open, I set it gently on the kitchen table and moved to the stove. I filled the old dented kettle with water and set it to boil. Mint tea, his favorite. I still had some of the blend he'd given me last winter, in a jar with his handwritten label. I let the leaves steep as the snow began falling beyond the window, soft and slow, like time had decided to hush for a moment. The apartment smelled like cedar and dried citrus peel. That morning light, the kind only January brings, filtered in low and golden, making even my modest kitchen look like a postcard. I sat down, tea in hand, and opened the envelope. There were two items, a document from Elaine's office and a letter, folded neatly, written in Walter's familiar slanted print. Dearest Grace, it read, you probably already know what this is, but I wanted to add a few words of my own before the lawyers speak for me. You've given without being asked. You've stood your ground when it cost you. That's character, that's legacy. I spent a long time believing wealth should be passed through bloodlines, but blood isn't proof of worth. You are. Everything I have is yours. Because you earned it, not with money, but with decency. Love, always, Walter. I didn't cry, not yet. There was a stillness in me that didn't need tears. It was a kind of peace I hadn't known before, the kind that comes when someone finally sees you for who you are, not who they expect you to be. The legal document was simple: his cottage, savings, pension, investment accounts, even the rights to the small poem his wife had published in a church newsletter decades ago. Everything now belonged to me. Elaine had signed it the previous Friday. I stared at the typewriter on my desk, the one Walter had given me when I left for college. It sat in the corner, quiet but present, like a witness to everything that had passed. I didn't call my parents. I hadn't since the party. Camilla had sent me a few chirpy emails, subject lines like checking in and hope you're well, but I hadn't opened them. My mother's number was still blocked. My father hadn't tried at all. Their absence no longer ached, it simply was. Instead, I poured another cup of tea, walked to the window, and looked out over the street. A few neighbors were scraping frost from windshields. A kid in a bright red hat trudged past with a lunchbox swinging from his hand. Walter's house stood silent across the road, shutters closed, chimney bare. I missed him more in the stillness than I ever had in the noise. The next day, I went to see Elaine. We met at her office downtown, where the furniture was too nice for a town this small. She wore her usual burgundy blazer and gave me a firm handshake. We can finalize the trust, she said. But Walter also left a note about a scholarship. I'd like that, I replied, but I want to start something in his name, something real. And so the Walter Whitmore Fund was born, small at first, but sturdy. It would offer a scholarship each year to one local high school senior who carries too much too young, as Walter had written in his notes. He would have liked that, Elaine said softly, signing the last page. I stopped by Ridge Rose Cafe afterward. Maya was still working weekends, and she gave me an extra biscotti just because. I took my drink to go and walk through town, letting the cold sting my cheeks. I passed the library, the old post office, the park bench where Walter once said the squirrels held court every morning. Every place had a memory. That Sunday, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Mr. Rayford stood there, bundled in a heavy wool coat, his cane tapping gently on the tile. In his hand, a small brown box, carefully wrapped and tied with twine. He left this with me, he said. Told me to give it to you after the papers came. I invited him in, poured us both tea, and let him sit in the armchair Walter had once claimed as his own. He watched me unwrap the box. Inside was a silver pocket watch, scratched but solid, warm from his coat pocket. The initials MWW were engraved on the back. He carried that through the war, Rayford said, and through every big moment after, birth of his son, death of his wife, even to your graduation, though he didn't say anything. I ran my thumb over the surface. The second hand still ticked. Faint, but steady. There's an inscription inside the cover, he added. I popped it open. It read, "Time doesn't make things clear. Kindness does." He wanted you to have it, Rayford said. Said you'd know what time it really was. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, I lit a candle, brewed a fresh pot of tea, and opened the curtains to let the moonlight in. I turned on the old lamp on my desk and cleared the space around the typewriter. The keys waited patiently, just as they always had. I reached into the drawer, pulled out a crisp sheet of paper, and rolled it into place. My fingers hovered for a moment. Then I began to type. I placed the letter on my desk, load the typewriter with fresh paper, and begin typing. My parents gave my sister $10 million. Some people inherit silver spoons or family heirlooms. I inherited a porch swing, a pocket watch, and the quiet certainty that kindness isn't weakness, it's legacy. Looking back, it wasn't the money or the estate that changed me, but the soft, unwavering faith one person had in me when no one else did. We spend so much of life trying to prove we're worthy of love, of attention, of a seat at the table. But sometimes the most profound love is the kind that doesn't ask us to prove anything at all. Like a porch light left on through a storm, a quiet act of goodness can guide someone safely home. If this story stirred something in you, maybe take a moment today to believe in someone the world has overlooked. That's how legacies begin, one silent kindness at a time.